Agenda is today coming to you from the Amity International School, and the reason we've chosen this location is because the students sitting behind me, they're all class 10 students who are perhaps one of the last batches to have the constant credit program. Because from 2018, it's likely that board exams will be back across the country. Now, these decisions have far-reaching repercussions, and while the class 10 board exams wasn't entirely unexpected, what was unexpected was the other announcement that the 3-language policy will be extended from class 8 to class 10. Now, it's got many people asking, will Sanskrit board exams or for the South, Hindi board exams become compulsory? We'll be speaking to the students just a bit. Also, these students seem to be quite happy that class 10 board exams are back. We'll find out why in just a bit. First, let's just hear what HRD Minister Prakash Javadekar said when asked whether students were being forced to give third language exams in their boards.
Let me make it very clear. We are not imposing any language and we are not making any language compulsory. The 3-language formula is operating in all the states except Tamil Nadu and Puducherry. So whatever CBSE has yesterday recommended, it will be processed and then we'll take a call on that and then we'll. But let me make very clear that we are not imposing any language, but we want people to learn more and more languages.
We want people to learn more Indian languages, but how do the students feel about Sanskrit? Just a fun fact. I asked all the students over here, out of all these students, because it wasn't compulsory, nobody opted for Sanskrit except that young man over there, right at the corner. We'll be speaking to him and his Sanskrit teacher in just a bit. First, let me just introduce the panel on agenda today. We have Professor N.K. Ambasht. He used to be the chairperson of National Institute of Open School and was part of formulating the 3-language policy. We also have Professor Apurvanand. He's a professor of Hindi at Delhi University. We have Samit Basu, very popular author of books like Turbulence. We also have the principal of Amity International School, Mrs. Mohan. We'll be speaking to them in just a bit. I just wanted to first just speak to the students over here. All of you are class 10? Yes. Okay, now who among you is very upset that board exams is going to come back? Is everybody happy or upset? You're upset. The only one upset. Yeah, why is that?
Because I think in boards the rat race will begin again, and we would not be able to focus on a passion basically, and we would be like toiling for the marks, and our childhood, what I believe, would be taken away from us.
You would have thought that most kids would feel like her, but the fact is, and the government has cited, that the boards have been brought back by popular demand, and all these kids, their parents, a lot of parents over here, they went and told the government, lobbied with the government, you have to bring the boards back. And tell us, why do you want the board exams back?
Ma'am, I think having the boards would impart seriousness amongst the students, which I think is not there in the CCE system. And having boards in class 10th would make sure that we study hard, and the pressure that students face in class 11th and 12th, I don't think that pressure would be...
You all like the pain of exams. Yes. Okay, well, the other thing that we really want to talk about on agenda is the third language theory. Is it, extending it to class 10, is it beneficial or not? Samit Basu, you're, of course, of the generation that we did Sanskrit till class 10. And Sanskrit, just to tell our viewers, for Hindi speaking, the third language formula is one with various combinations, but in Hindi speaking states like Delhi, Uttar Pradesh and other states, the third language was always Sanskrit in most places. Now in schools like this, because they're more liberal and it was an easy policy, which they're going to make a more formal one right now, they could opt for foreign languages as well. But that may change. So Samit Basu, is this a good idea, what the government's proposing?
You know what? We've had this whole idea and implementation discussion about this government for a longish time, and I find myself always cast into this slight panic whenever these great transformative ideas happen, because I find myself worrying about what's going to happen next, right? So while doing another language for boards and Sanskrit, all of that. I mean, no one's debating the value of intrinsic value of a language or anything like that. But I'm worried a bit about the students who suddenly have to take boards over the next few years. And I hope that it's going to be phased in a reasonably, in a normal manner, so that you don't have to learn a board level language suddenly when you're in class 10 and are already kind of, racing head over heels to study for the boards. The other thing which
the teachers agree with you, by the way. They're all saying yes.
And the other thing is actually is a larger point really, and it's something that I feel is something that really we need to be thinking about in this country, is that within 10 to 15 years, the whole world is going to be facing this huge jobs crisis, because automation is going to change the world as much as the internet did, right? So in every country, and India is going to be hit very hard by this, because already we have a jobs crisis and an education crisis. So if we are looking at a situation where our education policy needs to be very firmly forward-looking to figure out what challenges the next generation of students are going to face in the future and how they're going to get jobs and lives and live a better life than their parents did.
Right.
Now, if at this point, again, not taking away anything from the value of culture, language, any of those things, if our primary focus is on fixing our past as opposed to finding survival strategies for the future, then I think we're in very deep trouble.
So, Professor Ambash, how would you counter that?
Well, you see, the origin of three-language formula was the first language, that is the mother tongue of the child, mother language, I would say, not tongue. And the second was English or Hindi, depending on the area where it was located. And third was an international language. So somewhere English would come as second
But
language.
that all changed.
That all changed. I mean, I'm telling you from the very enunciation of three-language
So now,
formula.
the one that is
Now, Sanskrit. Why Sanskrit?
Yeah.
Let me come to the main central topic of today's. You see, Sanskrit is the root language of mother language of all Austroasiatic languages, which include Hindi, which include all the European languages, Latin, French, German, and all those things. Second, Sanskrit is very, very conducive, or I would say amenable to computer languages.
Okay.
In future, this is the computer, it has been researched and it has been found that the most scientific language, computer-wise, is Sanskrit.
Okay.
Number 3, Sanskrit being the root language is a source for transition
So
from
you
it
think
to-
they would all benefit? But the thing is that
let me put a rider on this. Any abrupt change and imposition of certain expected standards,
right.
particularly at class 10th level, will have to be graduated and watered down.
Okay.
And it has to be graduated.
Okay, so it's gradual. So, Professor Apurvanand, we just did a show of hands over here, and just before the show, and none of the students had opted. Only one student who had passed out last year, and he said he had a class of 12 which opted for Sanskrit. So obviously it's not popular. Professor Ambasht over here is talking about the various benefits of it, but it's not popular. So this third language thing, how would you sell it? I mean, in the end, will it be beneficial for students over here? Because it does mean that the third language, which is in the south, which is Hindi, they'll have to make that a board exam as well.
Well, I don't know which schools these students are. So far as my knowledge goes of the private schools Delhi, I know that many of the so-called prestigious schools don't even offer Hindi as a language. So let's not talk about Sanskrit. Even Hindi is not offered as a language. So let's talk about the status of teaching of languages or Indian languages. We don't need to extol the virtues of Sanskrit and call it mother of all languages, because it's linguistically wrong to say that. What we need to really look into, why this three-language formula was formulated. It was an integrative principle. in which the expectation was that children from an area would learn language of a different area. But this whole thing was subverted mostly in northern India. What northern India did was to opt for Sanskrit, which was an easier way out. So they didn't go for a southern language, they didn't go for Tamil or Malayalam or any northeastern language, Manipuri or any other language. And it was expected that other states would offer Hindi. So it created a very absurd situation in which the very purpose of three-language formula was defeated. Now, the talk of Sanskrit is in air for last 2 years without realizing that we have lost the ability to teach Sanskrit properly in schools. And why? Because we lived under this deception. We opted for Sanskrit and students were given marks. It was Sanskrit, and I know that in many cases it was even Persian, and students used to get high marks only because they opted for Sanskrit. So it was kind of deception. So let's get out of this deception and let's start in a very serious manner think about teaching of Indian languages or languages per se. Teaching of Indian languages is in a great crisis. So let's face it.
Okay, so Ms. Mohan, would you agree with what Professor Purvanand is saying?
I think that I agree with him that the respect has to be given to all the languages, be it Sanskrit or the other foreign languages. And
foreign languages are not even in the fray at the moment.
See, what we are talking about, that even if the Sanskrit language that needs, and if he said that there are many schools are not opting for Hindi, schools like ours make it compulsory that Hindi is equally to be respected vis-a-vis any other language.
Right.
You can't punish a child because the child is speaking in Hindi,
right,
just because it's a so-called the known fact that everybody has to communicate only in English.
Right.
In Hindi period in my school, children stand up, even the KG ones, and they wish in Hindi. That's something which we respect a language.
Yeah.
And I think, yes, gradually the language has to be taught and children need to enjoy that language. Then when the impact and the importance...
So do they enjoy Sanskrit?
There are children who are learning shloks in Sanskrit in our school, the primary children.
But how do you feel about when it becomes compulsory till class 10?
Compulsory is something which anything in the world that becomes compulsory becomes debatable.
Okay, I just wanted to ask the Sanskrit teacher over here, ma'am. You heard what Professor Purvanand is saying, that, they're talking about it, because he was countering what you said, Professor Mbasht, about the superiority of it or the benefits of it like that. And would you agree, how would you counter what Professor Purvanand is saying, ma'am?
श्रीमान जी ने बिल्कुल सही कहा, संस्कृत को छोड़कर हम संस्कृति नहीं अपना सकते। भारत है, जब तक उसकी भाषा है, कोई भी भाषा उसके राष्ट्र को गौरव देती है।
जी, लेकिन मैम ये जो स्टूडेंट्स हैं, ये आपके जो स्टूडेंट्स हैं, ये सारे इनका they have their third language is what? You have a foreign language.
We have German, French, and
so
we have the option
they would
of Sanskrit.
want to study that.
सर, मैम आप इतनों को मत परखिए। हमारा बहुत बड़ा समूह है जो इस भाषा का सम्मान करता है, वो पढ़ना चाहता है। हमारे पास आउट बच्चे वो ये कहते हैं हमारे स्कूल में यदि 11th-12th में संस्कृत होती तो हम संस्कृत लेते। उनकी ये सोच है मैम। संस्कृत केवल भाषा नहीं है मैम, वो जोड़ती है आपको और हमको और राष्ट्र को।
Samit, do you think that a lot of the fears that some people have, and do you, because in Bengal, the third language policy would be different. Very different, yeah. So how do you think they would react, or other states would react to this kind of order by the CBSE? It's not final yet, that's a caveat, but it looks like it's going that way.
See, I mean, this is a very evolved school. Let me talk about my school.
That's right, yeah. This is an international school, yeah.
We didn't learn third language, we survived it.
Right.
No one wanted to learn.
You just had Bangla and...
Well, Bangla was our second, Hindi was our third.
Right.
Which is responsible for my bad Hindi even today.
Right.
Right.
That you didn't have any board exam in Hindi.
No, we just didn't like having this third language being made to study something while recognizing it's a beautiful language and all of that. But it wasn't taught well either.
Right.
As was just being discussed, which I think is very relevant. It's not so much about whether they're going to like or grow. I mean, learning language is good, let's say. But I think the larger question is, at a time when we need to drastically figure out exactly what we are doing in education, I think this debate is not, this is not the best of debates to be having.